The conference, The Integral Ecology of Pope Francis for the Protection of the Common Home, was directed by Cardinal Peter Turkson and representatives of Judaism and Islam.
Celebrations of the 5th anniversary of the pontificate of Pope Francis took place at the headquarters of the Apostolic Nunciature in Jaffa, Tel Aviv.
The liturgical pilgrimage continues along the holy places linked to the Passion. The second stop was the Flagellation Chapel, followed by the Church of Lazarus in Bethany.
The Via Crucis in Jerusalem, whose tradition began with the presence of the Franciscans in the Holy Land, is a devotion that during Lent becomes even more intense.
In order to live Lent with purpose, a group of students from the parish center of the Latin parish in Aleppo visited children with cancer and brought them hope and joy.
The Holy Land, its beauties, its great significance for the history of humanity. Landscapes that refers to the Canticle of the Creatures, composed by Saint Francis, the poetic text that inspired Pope Francis to write the Encyclical Laudato Si, a praise to creation, to universal brotherhood, and to dialogue, which was initiated in the Holy Land by the saint himself when he met the Sultan Malik al-Kamal in 1219.
Il tema del creato ci accomuna. Tutte e tre le grandi religioni che fanno riferimento ad Abramo hanno come anche...
The theme of creation brings us together. All three major religions referring to Abraham have as their theological substratum the idea of a creator God and therefore of a creation. Care for creation is a topic that encourages dialogue and collaboration. I would say that even people outside of the group of believers, even an atheist, understands how important it is to take care of what he calls nature, of what we call creation.
Delle fedi abramitiche, direi al di fuori anche perfino dei credenti, cioè anche un ateo capisce quanto sia importante prendersi cura di quella che lui chiama natura e che noi chiamiamo creato.
In the Notre Dame of Jerusalem Center Pontifical Institute, experts and representatives of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam analyzed the Holy Father's encyclical. Among those present was the prefect of the Department for the Integral Human Development Service Corps, Peter Turkson.
Take ecology as the environment. Okay, but the environment, not only the natural environment, but every set of environment, every set of conditions or situations which must be favorable to promote the well-being of the human person. That for us, put all of those things together, you call it, integral ecology. It's natural, it is human, it is social, it is peace.
The document, intended for Christians and non-Christians, emphasizes that everyone is invited to build a common home and an integral ecology based on the balance between creation and economic, political, and social relations.
In Islamic tradition, God has created earth, and God put into earth all what man needs in perfection and in balance. And so it is the duty and responsibility of man to take care of that earth, because it is God's design, and anything that man does in order to distort this environment is an act against God. And that's why it is so important, if you want to consider yourself to be a believer, a good believer, then you should do what God has asked you to do. And what God asks us to do is to be able to take care of Mother Nature and Mother Earth, and to be able to live in peace with others so that there will be no destruction. And so that's the important message of Pope Francis, and it is a message to all humanity.
Pope Francis's encyclical is a reflection of the Hebrew biblical tradition that teaches us that there is an inextricable link between our environment and our society and the way we behave. and that if we behave immorally towards one another or selfishly in our own interests without responsibility for others, then it will affect the whole of the ecosystem and it will ultimately destroy us and bring about disaster. That we will have peace and productivity in our society when we live in a moral fashion in the way we treat one another and the way we behave towards our ecosystem.
In Laudato Si, Pope Francis emphasizes that global development is a challenge for everyone. We need international policies that promote a sustainable ecology in favor of the human being, with particular attention to the poorest. As the organizer, Brother Giorgio Vigna, indicated, the objective of the event was to sensitize and stimulate concrete actions.
Dunque la nostra intenzione era quella di far conoscere questo messaggio di Papa Francesco.
Our intention was to divulge Pope Francis's message to the Israeli and to the Arab societies to promote its richness and its proposals, in the hope of being able to do more and to do it together, propagating a strong and urgent universal message.
Fare qualche cosa di più insieme. Ecco. Quindi far conoscere un messaggio universale, forte e urgente.
This March 13th, Pope Francis celebrates the 5th anniversary of his pontificate. When he stood on St. Peter's Square, Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio said that the Cardinal brothers went to the ends of the earth to find the Bishop of Rome. These words are still recalled today in the various celebrations held around the world.
Sono andati a prenderlo quasi alla fine del mondo, ma siamo qui.
The offices of the diplomatic mission of the Holy See in Israel are in Jaffa, Tel Aviv, where the Apostolic Nunciature in Israel celebrated Pope Francis's 5th pontificate anniversary with a reception in the city that St. Peter visited several times. Monsignor Leopoldo Girelli, Apostolic Nuncio to Israel, welcomed the members of the diplomatic corps and the civil and military authorities to St. Peter's Monastery, including bishops, religious, and faithful from the Melkite, the Maronite, and the Latin communities. How beautiful and how sweet it is when brothers live together in unity. With these words, Monsignor Girelli began his speech to those present, who gathered there for the anniversary celebration. During these 5 years, the nuncio emphasized, Pope Francis has continued to promote the ongoing dialogue between Catholics and Jews with enthusiasm and sincerity. As Archbishop of Buenos Aires, he was already actively engaged in the dialogue with Jews and Muslims, and as Pope, he has continued this commitment. In this context, Monsignor Girelli continued, I would like to recall his visit to Israel in 2014. This was his first official trip abroad. He came as a pilgrim and friend. His pilgrimage underlined his desire to help build bridges and strengthen dialogue, placing himself at the service of unity and reconciliation. The Minister of Communication, Ayub Kara, who could not travel to Jaffa because of an extraordinary vote session at the Knesset, should have been present at the representation of the government of Israel. Mr. Akiva Tor, head of Bureau for World Jewish Affairs of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, delivered the speech on his behalf. On this occasion, I would like to thank His Holiness Pope Francis for his commitment in the relationship between the Jews and the Catholic Church, and between the Holy See and the State of Israel. The Israelis gratefully recall his visit to Israel and to the Great Synagogue in Rome. His efforts to promote a friendly relationship, a mutual understanding, and an interreligious dialogue enable stronger relationships. Both the Apostolic Nuncio and the government also recalled that next year will mark the 25th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between the Holy See and the State of Israel. Long before the independence of the modern State of Israel, the Catholic Church played a significant role, not only in promoting pilgrimages to the Holy Land, but also in welcoming pilgrims, in educating young people, in taking care of the sick, helping the poor, and promoting dialogue. The custody of the Holy Land, which celebrates the 800-year anniversary of its presence, is an example of this fact. In conclusion, Archbishop Girelli said he was confident that the State of Israel will continue to value the Holy See's tenet of peace, understanding and tolerance, which can only be achieved through dialogue, and engagement between equals that is premised on openness, respect, good faith, and empathy.
In the chapel of the flagellation, the crown of thorns, which are intertwined with crystal roses letting light pass through, indicates that over pain and death, hope prevails. The place where Jesus was scourged and condemned marked the third station of the Lenten pilgrimage, which is part of the Lenten tradition in the Holy Land. Father Stefano Varan celebrated the Mass and the prayer of the Vespers as well. In the homily, Father Luigi Maria Epicoco spoke about the fruitfulness of pain.
Gesù diventa solidale anche con questa parte del dolore umano che è il dolore fisico.
Jesus supports this side of human pain, the physical pain, a pain that leads us to desperation that calls for death because it can become unbearable. This is the place where Jesus experiences this kind of suffering that almost touches despair and teaches us abandonment. As in Gethsemane, here he teaches us that offering can change everything. That is, we should offer our suffering. Not that this explains suffering, but in a certain sense it makes it bearable, human, and fruitful.
Sofferenza in un certo senso, ma la rende vivibile, la rende umana, la rende feconda.
The fourth stage of the pilgrimage took place in Bethany, the land of Martha, Mary, and Lazarus, Jesus' friends. Among those present were representatives of the small local Christian community made up of about 30 families.
I try to live charity, including everyone, Christians and Muslims. Charity is the most important virtue in our lives. It allows us to reflect the light of Christ in the world. We are the light and the salt of the earth.
Here, the Mass was celebrated by Father David Grenier, the Secretary General of the Custody of the Holy Land. Also in this Mass, the homily was preached by Father Luigi Maria Epicoco.
Gesù è stato capace di dare la sua
Jesus was able to give his life for Lazarus. He resurrected Lazarus, and from that moment on, he was sentenced to death. A sort of exchange takes place. Lazarus is safe, and Jesus dies instead. This shows us that the greatest love is always concrete. It is never abstract. At some point, giving one's life means dealing with the name of Lazarus, the name of a person or a situation in which we are called to truly give our life.
chiamati a dare veramente la nostra vita.
After Mass, the reading of the Gospel took place. It narrates Lazarus' resurrection by the entrance to his tomb, where later everyone was able to enter to pray. An unforgettable experience for pilgrims who have the privilege of living Lent in the Holy Land. We come from Brazil, where we learned about many events through the Gospel, but here we can live the Gospel. We are standing right where Jesus walked.
Pude ver, pude tocar nos lugares, pude sentir.
I was able to see and touch places. I could feel a more alive, a deeper faith. I mainly was able to perceive that Jesus is real. However, does my faith depend on the fact that I am here? On the fact that I was able to come here? Not at all. I have always believed. But being here enriches my faith in a more tangible way.
Não, eu sempre acreditei, mas estando aqui, eu sinto de forma muito mais concreta.
At every station of the Via Dolorosa, there are many feelings and emotions that come up. The faithful not only remember, but also try to unite their lives to the journey of Christ to the cross. On every Friday of the year at 3 p.m, the Franciscans of the Custody of the Holy Land symbolically walk along the Via Dolorosa, praying in different languages and following the same path that, according to tradition, Jesus followed up to Calvary, which is now located inside the Basilica of the Holy Sepulchre. This devotion developed in the 13th century when the Franciscans began to lead pilgrims from the West.
Che la Chiesa ha sempre accettato come una devozione autentica.
The Church has always accepted it as an authentic devotion, as a way of entering Christ's passion. It is naturally a devotion based on Holy Scriptures, as indicated by the Gospel. However, it is also very interesting because there are other moments of Christ's passion that are not found in the Gospel.
È molto interessante di altri momenti della passione di Cristo che non si trovano nel Vangelo.
The episodes not described in the Gospels refer to the traditions that arose in Jerusalem, Jesus' encounter with Veronica and his 3 falls. The 14 stations that mark the Via Dolorosa today took shape over the centuries, thanks to the Franciscans' presence in the Holy City. Today, the starting point of the Via Crucis, located at Pilate's Praetorium and the Antonia Fortress, is a Muslim school. It is near the Monastery of the Flagellation. The first station of Jesus' condemnation is about 600 meters from the Holy Sepulchre.
La Via Crucis è importante per noi cristiani, è considerato come
The Via Dolorosa is important for us Christians and is considered a devotion, like the Rosary. The Church has always given importance to what are referred to as the paraliturgical celebrations, that is, celebrations that are not part of the liturgy and the official celebrations of the Church, but that are based on God's Word and on liturgical forms.
le celebrazioni ufficiali della Chiesa, ma hanno la loro base nella parola di Dio e nei formulari liturgici.
The path winds through the old city where Jesus likely walked by, passing through the crowd that was curiously watching him while others were clamoring for his death. From Jerusalem to the whole world, this devotion has been spread far and wide from Italy, thanks to the preaching of St. Leonard of Port Maurice, a 13th century Franciscan who promoted this popular missions in several Italian cities. Today, the Via Dolorosa is an intense experience, especially during Lent. However, experiencing it in the Holy Land by walking in Jesus' footsteps is truly unique.
Okay, it was really an experience, wonderful experience, spiritual experience for me, since we come together and we walk the same stations of the cross that where Jesus walked, and with the people all around the world. So it was an amazing spiritual experience for me.
Over 500,000 people died since the beginning of the civil war in Syria, which broke out exactly 7 years ago.
Unfortunately, the situation is still dangerous.
Unfortunately, the situation here is still dangerous. After the UN Security Council decided to impose the truce, the situation of the population has improved, but there are still many victims in Damascus. Last week, over 100 bombs hit the city in just 2 days. We continue to seek peace in the darkness of this war.
100 mortars hit Damascus. We are still looking for the peace in the darkness of this war.
The health sector is among the most damaged, according to data from the Save the Children organization between July 2017 and January 2018. There were at least 92 attacks on Syrian hospitals, surgeries, and ambulances. In contrast with this reality of pain, the students of the Center of Education of the parish of Aleppo visited the pediatric oncological ward of the City University Hospital. Many children suffer because of their illness and also for having lost their family and friends. The visits and demonstrations of affection, despite everything, give them a smile and a hope.